Are you trying to use the front door? Who do you think you are? I shuddered to hear the voice of my mother-in-law. It was not the first time she had spoken to me like that. Ever since I got married and moved in with her, I had to endure her verbal abuse day in and day out. That day, her bullying didn't stop. People like you should use only the back door. Wait, I will get you a doghouse. You can live in it. Please, Kathy, you can't be serious. I don't like it when you call me by my first name. It gives me the chills. You and I are like mistress and servant, get it? If I tell you to eat a piece of trash on the street, you put it in your mouth. No way. Go and take care of the garden now. It's colder than usual today, but a slip would be more than enough for you to wear. I won't allow you to come inside until it's clean. I began to tend to the garden as she ordered me to do. It was sub-zero outside. My arms and legs were shivering. My cheeks ached from the north wind. My whole body was shaking so badly, and my consciousness was fading. I can't take it anymore. Just when I was about to faint. Hey, are you okay? A warm voice I hadn't heard in a while echoed in my ears. My name is Lauren. My life in hell began with the passing of my mother. Mom! As she lay in bed, she didn't answer my call anymore. The sudden stroke was discovered too late, and the best treatment at the hospital could not save her. She was 48 years old. She died too young. I heard people around me whispering that she must have been overworked. She raised me as a single mother. My father walked out on her shortly after I was born. I never knew where he was or if he was even alive. My mother worked several jobs to give me the best education she could afford. I always wanted to repay her for her hard work, so I studied hard and got a good job at a major telecommunications company. I worked hard for 3 years. When I was finally able to support her financially, I met Nathan, who later became my husband. We worked in different departments of the same company. He was one of the best salesmen, always bringing in results. When he approached me, I immediately fell for him. His success at work was appealing, but more than that, I was attracted by his sweetness. I have been somewhat distrustful of men because of my father, but he dispelled my prejudice. Let's get married. When he mentioned it, I agreed in a heartbeat. I was in love with him, and my mother had been waiting for us to get married for a long time. She wholeheartedly wished me the happiness she couldn't have for herself. She always told me so. The process went very quickly, and within a month of the proposal, we were resigned as married. When we only had to wait for the wedding 2 months later, she suddenly passed away. I was devastated. She was my only family. My despair was deep, remembering how we had supported each other throughout our life. Of course, I canceled the wedding, and instead, I prepared for her funeral. I couldn't help but feel sorry for Nathan. He was very concerned about me and told me not to worry about it. Another person who saved me was my mother-in-law, Kathy. She had been attentive to us since before we were married. She had a gentle personality and was a flower arrangement teacher. She also lost her husband early in life and experienced raising Nathan as a single parent. My mother's passing wasn't just someone else's problem to her. When I was shedding tears in front of the coffin, she gently spoke to me. Don't cry, dear. Losing your mother is indeed terrible, but you're not alone. You have Nathan and me. But I ruined the wedding. That's just a formality. The important thing is that we are now a family. You can count on me. I can't replace your mother, but that doesn't change the way I feel about you. Thank you. Her kind words made me wail on her shoulder. Her gentle arms wrapped around me. I never imagined that the same person would later torment me. When the funeral was over, I was finally ready to move forward. Nathan and I moved in with Kathy after she enthusiastically invited us to live with her. Nathan thought that I would feel safer if we lived with someone else. When we got married, I quit my job. He was a frequent business traveler, so he felt better leaving me with her while he was away. I did not object either. I had made up my mind to devote myself to her to make up for the loss of my mother. However, my intentions were soon trampled upon. "Lauren, you don't even know how to make chicken soup?" She harshly criticized the meals I prepared. They were badly seasoned and looked messy. When I served her a greasy meal, she left the table without tasting a single bite. "Are you trying to kill me too, by serving me lousy food?" I was totally taken aback. It was unthinkable from the kindness she had shown me up to that point. She had always been sweet to me until we moved in with her. When I was depressed, she did her best to comfort me. Her attitude changed completely as soon as we started living together. She was a perfect example of a bully. She criticized me about everything from the way I cleaned the house and the way I greeted the neighbors, to even the smallest details of how I should act in our neighborhood. She didn't even stop there. Whenever I behaved in a way she didn't like, she punished me for it. "It's such a shame that you can't even clean the house properly. I'm so disappointed to have an incapable daughter-in-law." "I'm sorry." "Do you know why I asked you to move in with me? Because I wanted someone to take care of me. Someone to do the housework for me. Then I could work more freely. And yet..." "I'm doing my best on cooking, cleaning, laundry, and everything else. I'm trying to make sure that I don't interfere with your work." "I'm telling you that you're a total failure. What has your mother taught you? Or did she just hang around outside leaving you alone?" My mother was not like that at all. She raised me by herself and never had time for herself.
"How dare you talk back to me? I know that hardship better than anyone else. I will tell you what. Your mother was incompetent. Isn't that right? Because she raised a pathetic daughter like you."
"How could you say that?"
"You need to be re-educated. As punishment, skip dinner tonight. Of course you will cook for me. If you even try to taste it, I will throw you out of the house."
She often tortured me in this way, calling it education. I was not allowed to eat. I was not allowed to take a shower. When I was not allowed to sleep for a night as punishment for not cleaning well enough, it was really hard for me. I spent the whole night in the dark kitchen, fighting off sleepiness. I was forced to write a letter of apology to her. I had to write, "I'm sorry for my incompetence," dozens of times. I couldn't contain my tears from dropping on the paper. Even so, I never thought to tell Nathan about the mistreatments. To begin with, he was away on business trips so often that he was not home for half the month. When he did come home, it was usually well past midnight. I knew that his job was very demanding and that he worked hard for us. I couldn't let him worry about unnecessary things. Besides, he trusted her with all his heart. I didn't know if he believed me if I told him. And so, the days of torture went on for months.
"The trip is going to be a bit longer than usual."
As Nathan was leaving, he said in a formal tone. He was entrusted with a big project, and the trip was going to decide his future promotion.
"You'll be okay as always?"
"Sure."
"What's the matter? You look a little pale. You seem to have lost some weight too."
"It's nothing. I just haven't been sleeping well."
"It's getting colder these days. Take care of yourself. And take care of my mom too."
"Have a safe trip." I saw him off with a forced smile. How could I confide in him about my trouble? He was in the most critical time of his career. I didn't want to bother him about me. Kathy's bullying became limitless without his presence. That day, she ordered me to do something outrageous. It was a chilly winter afternoon, even though the sun was shining.
Clean up the garden today. It has been neglected all autumn. It's a complete mess out there.
I don't know much about gardens. I don't know which plants should be kept and which ones to be cut away. I'd rather have a professional take care of it.
Are you trying to make me spend money? You're just looking for an easy way out. If you don't know what to do, look it up on your phone. If you do anything wrong, I will punish you again.
Understood. Her fierceness pushed me reluctantly to go down to the garden. It was a large space, and even in winter, it had varieties of plants. I pulled out what I thought were weeds and gathered dead leaves. I was wearing garden gloves, but my hands were numb from the cold. My breath was white, and I felt my ears freezing. I was at my limit after 2 hours. I appealed to Kathy, who was just waiting inside the warm house. Kathy, I'm freezing. I can't move my hands anymore. Can I do the rest tomorrow? The garden is too big.
What a lazy girl you are. It's embarrassing to my guests if the garden is left messy.
I really can't take it anymore. The soil is cold. The air is freezing. I'm going to get sick.
Then keep doing that until you collapse. Until your limbs freeze. Oh, I just got a good idea. Take off your clothes.
What? No.
A girl like you has no right to wear clothes. Underwear will suffice. You will clean the garden almost naked. Don't forget to dig up the soil.
You can't be serious. I'm really going to die. I'm freezing even now.
You can see your mother again if you really die.
After making me take off my clothes, she slammed all the windows in the house and carefully locked them. I could do anything but stand there in disbelief. Even for a bully, that was way out of the line. She had even mocked my mother's death. I felt more sadness than anger, but soon I was overwhelmed by the piercing cold. The icy wind blew mercilessly against my bare shoulders and legs. I felt nauseous and fell to the ground, but the soil was also cold. There was no way I could tend to the garden in this condition. I couldn't even go out to the street in just my underwear. I didn't want my neighbors to see me. I was more concerned about the appearance than the danger to myself. Kathy's relentless abuse had brainwashed me. I was incapable of making normal human judgments and was reduced to a slave who obeyed her orders. As the sun went down, the cold outside became increasingly severe. The evening passed and night fell. I was still not allowed in the house and sat in a corner of the garden, losing the energy to even shiver. I put my hand on my shoulder, which was probably turning pale. I realized that I had lost all feeling in my hands. My head was starting to get foggy. I called out to my mother and finally collapsed to the ground. I didn't know how long I had been out. When I gained consciousness, I saw Nathan's face in front of me. It seems that he was holding me in his arms. The temperature of his hand faintly warmed my skin. My frozen lips barely moved. Honey?
What are you doing outside? You're almost naked.
What about your business trip, your important work?
I will get to that later. I've got to get you inside.
He picked me up and walked to the patio door. He was surprised to find it bolted from the inside. He checked the windows and was stunned that they were all locked too. I didn't have the energy to tell him what Kathy did. He went to bang on the front door 2 or 3 times, but no one came to open it. Then, he picked up a stone and slammed it hard against the sliding window in the living room. The piercing sound of breaking glass echoed in the garden. He stuck his hand through the crack and unlocked it. Finally, I was inside the warmth of the house.
What's going on?
Kathy, who seems to have been taking a bath, came running. She was wearing a bathrobe over her naked body. Even so, she looked warmer than I was. When Nathan banged on the door, she couldn't hear him in the bathroom. She gasped at the sight of scattered glasses.
Mom, what's going on?
What do you mean?
Lauren was on the verge of hyperthermia. She was naked in our backyard while you were warm and cozy in the bathtub.
I just asked her to clean up the garden.
I knew something was up. She was getting thinner by the day, and even this morning she looks exhausted. She often has dark circles under her eyes, like she's not sleeping. I notice these things every time I come back from my trip. I could only assume that something's happening at home.
Is that why you came back early?
I lied that it was a long trip and wanted to see what was going on. I went to work as usual and decided to leave on time today. Then I came back to my wife collapsed naked outside. You have been tormenting her.
I could understand what he was saying, even in my foggy consciousness. He was trying to help me. He sensed something unusual in our daily life. To make sure, he faked a business trip and came back to check on us. Sure enough, he came upon the scene of me being tortured by Kathy.
I was so careless. I didn't know you were bullying her.
This is education. She's an incompetent wife.
Who is talking? You're the one who can't do a damn thing. A flower arrangement or whatever. You've always been doing what you want. You rarely cooked for me since I was a child. I was forced to take care of myself.
Well, that's...
And now you became a bully. No, this is worse than that. You almost killed a person.
You're exaggerating. First of all, it was her fault for being slow cleaning the garden.
And shut up. I don't consider you as my mother for harming my wife. Get out of here immediately. I don't want to see you.
Nathan!
You should go outside in that gown. You will see for yourself how cold she was.
He grabbed her arm and forced her outside.
No!
She screamed and rushed into the house, unable to stand the cold for even a second. Then, she ran upstairs to her room. He stood there grimacing at her until she was out of sight.
Honey, let's get you in the hot bath.
As soon as she was gone, he immediately took me in his arms once again. I saw tears welling up in his eyes.
I'm so sorry. I didn't realize the suffering you were going through until today.
Oh, hon.
We will leave this house tomorrow. We will stay in a hotel until we find a new place to live. I'm not going to see my mom ever again.
She's your mother. You don't care about that?
Who does? You're the most important person in my life. You were so concerned about me that you couldn't tell me what was going on.
Well,
I promise to protect you from now on, and we'll have a happy home together.
being held firmly by him, I felt a lump that was frozen inside of me finally melt away. I sobbed into his chest. When he helped me into the bath, I felt my heart warm up to the core. Then, as he declared, we moved out the next day. We left our belongings behind for the time being and stayed in a hotel while we looked for a new place. We found an apartment right away and were able to move in a week later. When we returned to pick up our belongings, Kathy pleaded with me, "Hey, can we just forget the past and move on? I regret that I went a little too far." "Forget? You mean forget about you leaving me outside naked?" "I apologize. That was suddenly too much. And about me taking a bath, kind of forgetting about you." "That wasn't the only time you mistreated me. I'm not going to forget about you making me starve or making me write an apology letter." "The window is still broken. I haven't had a proper meal without you. The house is a mess, so I can't even invite my students." "I don't care, and I got nothing to do with it. Why don't you clean it yourself? You seem to still care about your reputation, But I've told the neighbors what you have done to me. I took pictures of a broken window and sent them to the right people. I also have a copy of an apology letter I was forced to write.
Why did you do that?
It's going to be very difficult to keep your head high in the neighborhood from now on. And your classes, I hope there still are students who want to learn from a teacher whose hobby is to bully people. I turned my back to her after saying all I wanted. She fell to her knees and couldn't say anything other than,
"Oh no, oh no."
I felt somewhat relieved, finished my business quickly, and returned to my new apartment. There, I was starting a new life with Nathan. I hope to create a loving home.
My husband announced to my mother-in-law that he's going to cut ties with her on Christmas.
You know, Christmas is supposed to be a sumptuous feast that everyone eats together. Moderation is fine, but I feel sorry for my son. You may not know this, but when it's Christmas, I think chicken should be more fitting.
Holly, my mother-in-law in a mocking voice, refused to eat the meal I had prepared for her. Immediately thereafter, my husband got up from his seat and took away the meal in front of my mother-in-law.
"I'm cutting off my ties with you." "What?"
My husband announced shortly, leaving my mother-in-law in a daze. We left my parents-in-law's house. I'm Nicole, 30 years old, and I work in an office at a company. My husband Barry is 31 years old and works for another company. We have known each other since we were children. Barry's father is a corporate executive, and his mother is a housewife, but when he was a child, his mother was often away from home for certain reasons, so we often took care of him at home. Because of this, Barry was well liked by my parents before we started dating, and Barry was also very fond of my parents. We were together all the time, and although there were times when we both went out with different people, we naturally started dating and got married. People around us were very excited about our marriage.
"I knew you two would get married."
We were embarrassed, but happy about the fact that we were married. However, my mother-in-law was the only one who was opposed to our marriage. The reason was that I had grown up without a mother, and also because Barry was supposed to be matched with a young lady who knew my mother-in-law. It was my mother-in-law's idea to marry him off, but Barry and my father-in-law ignored it. My mother-in-law directed her anger at me. My mother passed away due to illness when I was in junior high school. But then my mother-in-law looked at my family this way.
Women raised by a single parent are more likely to cheat on their husbands. They will not be able to do the housework and child rearing properly that their mothers should have taught them.
And other such groundless things she had said to me while hiding behind Barry and my father-in-law. My mother-in-law's family had been landowners for a long time, and the young lady that she wanted Barry to marry came from a family with a good background. She said that it would be better for Barry to marry her than me, who grew up in a single-parent household. It was for Barry's own good, she said, and treated me like an obstacle. At first,
"Why don't you think about marrying Nicole after you meet the young lady I know? There's no need to be so hasty."
She casually expressed her objection, but Barry did not seem to listen to her, so she began to speak more and more forcefully.
"Why are you marrying a girl with a single parent? Your mother found you a wonderful lady."
Barry's mother said to him right in front of me. Barry was furious.
"I'm not interested in that woman. And I don't care if Nicole has only one parent, or if she's an orphan, or if she had both parents. Don't ever say that crap again."
Since she got told off by him forcefully, she hid away from him, but still continued to repeatedly harass me.
"You need to get off your butt and leave Barry. If you love Barry, then get out of his sight so he can be happy."
She kept saying, "Happiness is not something to be decided by the parents. You say I can't do my chores because I was raised by a single parent. But I was the one who took care of the house while my father was at work, so don't worry. I countered my mother-in-law's words, but the fact that she called and even went as far as to belittle my father and tell me to leave Barry, I decided to discuss this with him. As a result, we had no choice but to stay strong until the wedding. But after that, we would keep our distance from his family, except for weddings and funerals. I especially won't have anything to do with my mother-in-law. We were both settled in our jobs, and we got married when I was 25. For the next 5 years, as Barry had said, except for the occasional visit from my father-in-law, we had very little contact with them. We had a good relationship as a couple, and 1 year before Christmas, I was pregnant with our first child. We were both wondering whether or not we should share it with my in-laws. I received a letter from my mother-in-law apologizing to me. At the time, I was so sad that Barry was no longer in my care that I took it out on you. I couldn't apologize right away because I didn't know how I would look to you. I am so sorry. I was quite surprised at what my mother-in-law had written, but if she were really sorry for what she had done, I would tell Barry about it. And then, on Christmas Eve, we would decide to go to my in-laws' house and tell them about the pregnancy.
I'm still not sure if I can trust everything in her letter, but we'll have to tell them about the baby eventually. We'll see how things go this Christmas.
Barry was being cautious about improving his relationship with his parents. Then, on Christmas Eve, when we arrived at my in-laws' house, my mother-in-law greeted us with a smile. She was the first to apologize to me.
I'm so sorry for what happened. I've been thinking about it and regretting it for the past few years. So it was really nice to see you again like this.
I was relieved to hear my mother-in-law's words and stepped into my in-laws' house as I was welcomed. That day, I spent Christmas Eve talking with my in-laws for the first time in a long time. The next day, however, an incident occurred. I was going to tell them about my pregnancy at a dinner party scheduled for Christmas Day, but I was asked by my mother-in-law,
Nicole, it's been a while. Can you help me cook?
She said, so I helped her. Although it's a dinner party, it was just my parents-in-law, my husband, and I enjoying a little luxury food and celebrating Christmas. However, my mother-in-law did not help me with the cooking. She left it to me because she said she's in a great hurry to go shopping and prepare for the dinner party. The menu had not even been decided yet, and it was only after 4 p.m. when she told me about it. I felt uncomfortable about it, but when I went to the supermarket, I found some large tacos which were on display, so I bought those. In fact, Barry and I both have fond childhood memories of eating tacos. When Barry would eat at our house, my mother would make these. It's fun and tasty when we all cook and eat together. She'd say, Barry would always remember this, even as an adult.
Nicole's mother was always very attentive, so I really enjoyed eating at your house because she took care of me when I ate alone. I was able to forget how lonely I was,
he told me, and I responded. It was really fun to eat tacos together, wasn't it? Thinking back on it now, it was also easy because all we had to do was prepare the ingredients. I laughed. And then the dinner party started, and I had just laid out the ingredients for the tacos on the table. My mother-in-law, who was watching me, opened her mouth and said,
Oh, you are serving tacos on Christmas?
Yes, well, you told me about what I was going to cook a little late. I can't cook anything elaborate, and besides, in our family, tacos hold a special meaning for us. Is that bad?
You know, Christmas is supposed to be a big feast for everyone. Moderation is good, but this is not good for Barry. You may not know this, but Christmas is all about chicken.
I couldn't hide my surprise at these words, and I looked at my mother-in-law's face. She was grinning and making fun of me. Then, Barry stood up and took my hand.
Let's go home. I'm cutting off ties with her.
What? Barry's words were followed by my mother-in-law and my voice. And then, my father-in-law Calvin spoke up.
Holly, weren't you trying to improve your relationship with Nicole?
In response to this question from my father-in-law, my mother-in-law stared at me with a serious look on her face. She began to answer in a voice that sounded as if she was really worried about Barry.
I was going to, but this isn't going to work. You brainwashed Barry, and you're not fit to be our daughter-in-law after all. I have apologized to you, and you're still using Barry to do hurtful things to me.
What? My mother-in-law's comment confused not only me, but also Barry and my father-in-law. According to my mother-in-law, she really wanted to improve her relationship with me. But she decided that it was impossible. And then, it turns out that the lady she tried to match with Barry before also got married. But because of the woman's infidelity, she got divorced and is looking for a new husband. So my mother-in-law decided to bring it up to Barry again. So she sent me a letter of apology to have him come to see her at Christmas. I later heard that while I was out shopping, my mother-in-law had casually told Barry about it. At this point, Barry was already angry with his mother. However, because of the matter of our future child, and since I was out shopping for food, they decided to discuss things after the dinner party was over.
You! Why are you pushing such a woman to Barry? He already has Nicole. Nicole would never cheat on him, and she's a much nicer girl.
The young lady comes from a good family. She and Barry will get along just fine as divorced couples.
I'm sure the divorce was caused by an affair, right?
You are a man. You can forgive a fling or two, can't you? You forgave me too. The in-laws began to argue. When my mother-in-law said those last words, it was as if time froze. My mother-in-law had an affair once when Barry and I were still children. Barry was in our house often because my mother-in-law was having an affair and was always away. My in-laws were on the verge of divorce once at this time. My mother-in-law apologized, and Barry was still very young. My father-in-law was reluctant to rebuild the relationship. My father-in-law was reluctant to reestablish it. My father-in-law, though quiet, became furious.
You think I forgave you easily for what you did to me back then? Are you saying that you have no problem with your son going through the same thing I went through?
As expected, my mother-in-law was choking on her own foolish words. Holly, you have the nerve to say that I'm prone to cheating on my husband and to leave Barry because of your selfish prejudice of me being raised by a single parent, didn't you? You're from a good family, so why did you have an affair? Don't you think something's wrong with your attitude? Hearing my words, my mother-in-law became even more furious, saying I didn't know what I was talking about. And just when the mood of the place was getting bad, Barry spoke up.
Did you ever think about how that must have felt at that moment? Or if I, who was only your child then, was feeling so lonely? You didn't think about all that, did you? At least, I would never marry a woman who would cheat on me. And I have no intention of leaving Nicole in the first place. I don't want to breathe the same air in this house with a woman like you. We are leaving.
Barry's face was full of anger and contempt. I followed him, unable to speak. My mother-in-law tried to keep Barry back, but my father-in-law would have none of it. From inside the in-law's house, I could hear my mother-in-law frantically apologizing to my father-in-law. When we got home,
I wish I could just tell Dad about the baby. But if he and Mom are going to be together, I don't want anything to do with it. I don't want Nicole involved either. I'm sorry you had to go through all this because of my parents.
Barry lowered his head. You didn't do anything wrong, and you were just their child. You are innocent. I couldn't do anything but reply. Later that evening, as we were relaxing at home, Barry received a call from his mother. Barry seems to be arguing with her. I could tell from the way Barry was acting that the discussion between the in-laws was not going to end well for my mother-in-law. I sensed from Barry's behavior that the discussion between his parents had ended badly for his mother.
My parents are getting a divorce. My dad was going to divorce her when I came of age, but he has been holding out until we got married so he wouldn't have to worry about us.
Barry ended the call with a terribly tired look on his face and told me that his parents were divorcing. My mother-in-law called Barry for my father-in-law, who had told her he was getting a divorce. She tried to have Barry to convince his father to reconsider, and also to make amends with Barry's supposed marriage partner, still going on with her selfish way of thinking. Naturally, Barry rejected this, and even told his mother that he would refuse to have any further contact with her. He also said that he was considering legal action depending on the situation. I was appalled at my mother-in-law's brazenness. Barry's condition, rather than mentioning it, I'm quite concerned about his and my father-in-law's mental state, and I just hope that they would be able to separate themselves from my mother-in-law as soon as possible. A few days later, we received a call from my father-in-law. We invited him to our house and had a discussion about the future. According to my father-in-law, his divorce from my mother-in-law was final, and that she was going back to her hometown for the time being. However, it was discovered that the lady and my mother-in-law had been pursuing the marriage proposal with Barry on their own. This led to a lot of criticism from the people around her, so she is expected to soon be kicked out of her house. And when that happens, she will turn to Barry for help. We could help her or we could ignore her. That would be up to our own judgment. Of course, Barry decided to ignore my mother-in-law. He even told me that if my father-in-law showed any kindness to her and continued to have anything to do with my mother-in-law, he would also cut his ties with my father-in-law. When my father-in-law heard this, he laughed out loud and said,
I don't have that kindness in me. I'm going to hire a lawyer so that I don't have to see her face ever again.
He told Barry.
Barry will continue becoming a fine man, and you will be there for him. I've seen that, and now I'm thinking it might be a good idea to go back to the countryside and live a life of solitude. You are thinking of retreating to the country by yourself? That's not a good idea, Grandpa.
Barry smiled at his father, who was a little sad.
I don't see why you two should be in any trouble. You two are getting along just fine, aren't you? Wait, Grandpa?
Barry's father, who seems puzzled by Barry's words, recognized the word Grandpa and looked surprised. I'm actually pregnant. Actually, I was talking to Barry about telling you at Christmas. I'm sorry it took so long to tell you. I bowed my head and laughed. My father-in-law looked as if he was about to burst into tears. He asked Barry if it was really true, and then turned to me and kept saying,
Thank you, thank you.
And he was happy to hear that. In the days since Christmas, my father-in-law had been emotionally drained due to my mother-in-law, so I was so glad to be able to report this to him. After talking a bit with Barry, it seems that sharing this news helped him come out of his exhausted state, and he started sanctioning my mother-in-law in a number of ways. First, in order to rebuild things, he meditated on that time when she was cheating on him, demanded restitution for the use of their savings, and asked me to submit and disclose to my mother-in-law's family her bullying and verbal abuse towards me. As for that, I have given my consent, so I provided my father-in-law with a recording of what she said before my marriage and during this Christmas that I had kept in case. Upon hearing this, my mother-in-law's family members became even more critical of her. My mother-in-law, who had nowhere else to turn but her parents' home, began to spend her days under cold stares. Only once did my mother-in-law contact Barry.
I don't consider you my mother anymore. I don't even want you in my life anymore. I'm talking to my lawyer, so any communication with me will have to go through him. I will no longer accept direct contact from you.
He hung up the phone and blocked incoming calls from her. And of course, my in-laws divorced. As for the affair that Barry's mother had when he was a child, my father-in-law was not able to file a claim due to the statute of limitations. But he would also explain why whenever he got asked about the reason for the divorce. My mother-in-law told her own family and friends that she was getting divorced due to a daughter-in-law issue, and that she was the victim in this situation. The truth about my mother-in-law's affairs spread quickly, and she completely lost the trust of the people around her. My mother-in-law, who had always had a lot of pride, had a hard time even finding a job. My father-in-law told her that she would have a very difficult life in the future. My father was aware of the situation at the time. He said to my father-in-law, "You've been working so hard all this time." He frequently invited my father-in-law to go fishing, which was a hobby he started after becoming single. When things had finally settled down, he was relieved, but still very tired. He has recently started to regain his energy. He and my father have become so close that they often drink together as well as go fishing. As for me, I have morning sickness, but my baby is growing well. I am having a comfortable pregnancy with the support of Barry, my father-in-law, and my father, who take care of me every day. I had only found out by my mother-in-law's affair when our engagement was finalized, but I remember the sad look on Barry's face at the time. We would never let that happen to our child, so Barry and I always talk about how we want to raise our child with love and care.
My mother-in-law told me abort your child so you can take care of my daughter's child. I said, okay, I will not have your grandchild. And then,
You are going to be the mother of a child. Don't you feel sorry for your unborn child?
My mother-in-law brought up my child. How coward is she?
Find a job. Both you and your daughter are healthy. You can still work if you choose to. Your daughter is still young. She can work as much as she wants. Find a job. If you want to protect your kids, you need to stand up by yourself. You do nothing and come ask for help. Things do not work that way.
My name is Sarah. I've been married to my husband Chris for 3 years. We get along well and are leading a happy life. My husband is a kind and caring man, but his mother has been bothering me day after day. Before we got married, she told us she wanted to live with us, so it is okay to live with her. When we started living together, I thought we had a good relationship. However, my father-in-law passed away 3 months ago, and our relationship changed drastically. Looking back on it now, I believe that my father-in-law was a palliative for my mother-in-law and me. After my father-in-law passed away, my mother-in-law began to pick on me. My mother-in-law seems to rely on my husband, and her rivalry with me is unbearable.
Why did Chris choose such a wife?
Whenever my husband is not around, she repeats such rude remarks. At times like this, I'm so glad I have a job. If I were a full-time housewife, I would have to endure this sarcasm all day long. If I could only endure it for less than an hour before my husband comes home, I would be free from this snoring. With this thought in mind, I decided to let it pass without saying anything in particular back to her. However, I was fed up with the daily grumbling for an hour. Twice a week, I'm in charge of making dinner. However, while I'm preparing the meal, my mother-in-law comes into the kitchen, and she's always nagging me about what to do and how to do it.
No, it's simmered dishes again today?
Angela, you don't like fried food, do you?
Don't treat me like I'm old.
The other day, you said you didn't like fried food. Before that, you said you didn't like a stew.
I never said that.
Has she got dementia? But if I say that, this screeching will go on and on. Well then, I will make fried food.
Fried fish would be good.
Something we don't have in the fridge again. I bet she checked in advance and said that. I understand. Then I will ask Chris to get some fish.
Wow, you use my son like a maid, don't you?
A maid? He's going to eat it too, so shouldn't it be okay for him to get it?
What am I saying is, you make my son run errands.
Okay then, we will have simmered vegetables today.
I don't want to eat simmered vegetables.
Then I will use delivery today.
Don't try to skip your chores.
I just couldn't help but have a bitter smile. In the end, no matter what I suggested, my mother-in-law denied everything. And when my husband comes home, she eats all the dishes she had scorned. What a pain in the ass. But this is not the only thing my mother-in-law says. She also says things about our children.
You have been married for 3 years, right?
Yes, that's right.
Grandchildren. Aren't you having my grandchildren yet? That is right.
Not yet, not yet.
Don't be silly. Answer me properly.
Not yet.
In the past 3 years.
Yes. If a couple can't have children after 3 years of marriage, they get divorced, wasn't it?
Yes, you know what I mean. When will I get to see my grandchildren?
I don't know. It's a gift, so.
Isn't that something wrong with you?
What?
You have a problem, so you can't get pregnant or something.
So annoying. Even though I've decided to ignore whatever she says, I'm dealing with her too. Well, I understand what she's trying to say only about this issue. It's not that my husband and I don't want children. Rather, we are always ready to have it, but there is nothing we can do about it, as it does not come to us. We are both still very busy with work, and indeed, we don't have much time to spend with each other right now. Even if my mother-in-law doesn't tell me, I'm thinking about having a child. We are ready to have a baby anytime. From my mother-in-law's point of view, it will be her adorable son's child. I'm sure she can't wait to see it.
But you are quite old to have a baby now already, aren't you? I doubt you will have a healthy child. I only accept healthy children.
I understand. I will make sure Chris knows it has to be healthy babies.
Wait a minute. This has nothing to do with my son.
Ha ha. He's a big part of it, isn't he? She must know she's doing something nasty, so she doesn't want her son to know about this. Well, I haven't complained to my husband about his mother. He's very concerned about his mother, who lost her husband. My husband would be hurt if he knew about this. Besides, I can still bear it. It's not like she's violent or anything. I thought that if I just let it go in 1 year and out the other, everything would be fine. Amid this routine, I found out I was pregnant. My husband and I, thinking of my mother-in-law, told her about it when I was in stable period. However, my mother-in-law had an indescribable look on her face. I thought she would be happy, so I was surprised to find out that she was not. The reason was that my sister-in-law got pregnant at the same time, and she was having problems. She and her husband were having marital problems. They were on the verge of divorce. What on earth was going on? The next day, my sister-in-law came to our house. What she told us was full of surprises. According to my sister-in-law, her husband had been unfaithful, and he left the house with his pregnant wife behind. She did not know what to do and came back to her parents' house relying on her mother. I think coming back to her parents' house itself is natural. However, there are a few things that I did not understand. First of all, this is the house of my mother-in-law, my husband, and I live. If she is going to live here from now on, she should at least tell my husband, let alone me. Furthermore, if her husband had moved out, Wouldn't it be good for my mother-in-law to support her at her place until the baby was born? My husband thought the same.
Hey sis, I know it has been hard, but it would be nice if you could say a word to us. It's our house now too.
In my opinion, I thought it was a very reasonable thing to say. But my sister-in-law and mother-in-law disagreed with us.
Your sister has been through a lot. She has been cheated on by her husband, and after all that, he left her. Why don't you go to her house? Sarah is pregnant too. It's not easy having two pregnant women in a house. I would suppose Sarah. Why don't you go to her house and support her?
I never know when he will come back.
Am I supposed to leave my pregnancy under that kind of stress? No, I didn't say that. Well, then you should have told me before you got here. Lots were going on, and I didn't have time for that. Besides, this is my parents' house. Why should I have to ask for your permission? Dad said that, remember? This is their home now too. When you come back, you have to tell them that you're coming back too.
What? Dad passed away? That's not valid. Well, there's no right or wrong. This is certainly my sister-in-law's parents' house. It is no wonder that some people think it's not necessary to say it in advance, and others think it is necessary to say it. And so, we started living together with my sister-in-law in an unfriendly atmosphere. 1 week later, my mother-in-law was so preoccupied with my sister-in-law that she stopped doing household chores altogether. On top of that, she treats me, a pregnant woman too, with a lot of disrespect. My mother-in-law would prepare breakfast as my husband is home, but I was in charge of all the dinners. And not only that, she did not ask me to do so, but she forced me to do so. When my husband came home and ate dinner, he asked me if I made dinner again today. Yes, I did.
It's been a week, right?
I confided in my husband about everything that had happened up until that day. And then, he went to his mother's room in a rage.
That's enough!
My mother-in-law and my sister-in-law were very surprised when my husband opened the door and suddenly yelled at them.
What are you saying all of a sudden? You have been busy with my sister for the past week. How come you are making Sarah do all the dinner preparation? It can't be helped. She's pregnant and it's hard for her. Sarah is pregnant too. Then why don't you help her? You said that you would support her the other day. Okay, I will support her. Sarah, would you mind if we stay at your parents' house for a week or so? I will look for a new place to live while we are there.
Yeah, that's okay. Thank you.
Well, let's get ready right away. Tell me what you need. I will pack.
Hearing this, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law stopped my husband in a panic.
Hey, wait a minute. What about the cost of living? What will happen to the upkeep of this house and our living expenses when you are gone? I don't know. You will have to take care of yourselves. I thought we were doing well with Mom because Sarah didn't say anything. But Mom, you were just being a jerk to Sarah, won't you? I'm an idiot for not noticing, but you're an even bigger asshole. Oh, come on. It's just a little playful banter. Sarah, I'm sorry for everything that has happened, so please stay here.
No, it's just too hard. I can't. Please, live happily with your daughter.
I'm saying I need you. Who do you think will take care of my daughter's baby when it's born?
I think your daughter, the mother of the child, will take care of it.
No, you will take care of it. So you will just have to give it up this time.
What the hell is she talking about?
You want me to give up my child? Yes, I do. You're younger than my daughter. You still have a chance. Screw you, bitch.
Wow, my husband said what I was just thinking. Understood. I will not have your grandchildren.
Oh well, then I guess you will just have to leave. Fuck off, bitch. I'm cutting ties with you guys. Chris, you better watch yourself when your sister is going through a rough time. Sarah is more important to me. Oh, you married a weird woman. Well, okay. But Chris, whatever happens to me in the future, you will not be entitled to get any inheritance, okay? I don't want it.
So we moved out of my mother-in-law's house and moved in with my parents. At first, we planned to stay there for a week. However, my parents told us to take it easy until the baby was born. My husband seemed to feel comfortable and took them up on their offer, and the rest of the time was very peaceful.
We should have done this earlier. I'm sorry for being insensitive.
It's okay. It's only happened after your father died. It was only for a short time.
I'm so sorry.
My husband seems so sorry that he has tears in his eyes. No, really, I have talked back to your mother. Really, it's okay. Besides, we have a peaceful life now. Let's look forward to the birth of our child.
Yeah.
And then, about 6 months after we started living at my parents', I got a call from my mother-in-law. I didn't have anything to say anymore, but I decided to answer the phone anyway. What is it?
Sarah, how are you?
The reason my mother-in-law contacted me was to ask for money. She said she had some money saved up, but she couldn't withdraw it right away because it is in the time deposit. So she wanted me to lend her some money for a while. I decided to ignore it for the time being. I hung up the phone without saying anything. I told my husband when he came home. He was like, "Huh? She can't withdraw money because it is in the time deposit. I don't understand what she means. Anyway, I'm pregnant right now. I shouldn't be thinking about unnecessary things at a time like this." However, my mother-in-law was so desperate that she came over to my parents' house. On a day like this, my husband and I were the only ones at home. When my mother-in-law confirmed that my parents were not there, she was about to barge in.
Wait a minute. This is Sarah's parents' house. You can't just barge in here. If you want to talk right here. I came all the way out here to talk to you. I didn't invite you. I thought we cut ties with you guys. It's not that easy to cut ties, is it? So I need you to lend me money. Impossible. Go home now.
My mother-in-law is treated so badly by my husband. Even so, my mother-in-law does not want to leave the front door.
I will tell you the truth, so please lend me some money.
And then, my mother-in-law told me something that, well, didn't surprise me. My sister-in-law told me that her husband had cheated on her and that he had moved out of the house. But that was a lie. She cheated on him and got pregnant with a man who was not her husband. So she was divorced and kicked out of the house. Moreover, her husband is demanding alimony from her. When my husband and I heard this story, instead of being surprised, we were convinced. Although we have only known each other for a short time, my sister-in-law's husband is a very gentle person. There was no way that he would throw out his wife who was pregnant with his child.
That's what she deserves. Why don't you ask the father of the child for help? Well, he ran away. It's really dumbfounding. I'm not going to help her. I have no reason to help her. I will never forget what you said to me. What did I say?
My mother-in-law and sister-in-law are really beyond help.
You told Sarah to give up the baby. I apologize for that already. Besides, it is growing up fine, isn't it? Oh, my beautiful grandchild. Don't touch me.
My mother-in-law tried to reach her hand on my protruding belly. I shook it off as hard as I could. There's nothing more offensive than being petted by a stranger.
I apologized. Don't hold it against me.
Sorry, Chris, may I? He nodded silently. I can't forgive you for telling me to give up my child. You do nothing and come ask for help. Things do not work that way.
Well, that's that then. Goodbye.
My husband kicked my mother-in-law out the front door and locked it. 6 months have passed since then. All we got from my mother-in-law was a postcard telling us that my sister-in-law had a baby. We haven't been in touch, so we don't know what's going on with my mother-in-law, my sister-in-law, and her child. But I like to think they are working hard for the child. Meanwhile, I successfully delivered my first child 5 months ago. A sweet, sweet boy. Raising a child is often a challenge, but with the help of my parents, he's growing up fast. I will continue to protect this life for the sake of my child. There are a certain number of people who can only think of themselves. It's a sad thing, isn't it? At any rate, I'm glad that Sarah and her family were able to escape from her in-laws. From now on, please enjoy a peaceful life. Thank you for watching to the end. Please subscribe to our channel. See you in the next video.
Returning from childbirth leave, my bankbook and seal were missing. Me, thief, call 110. Hubby stop, mom's home. Me, police are here.
I have to call the police.
Hey, stop it!
My husband hurriedly took my phone away from me. I've always kept my bankbook and my ID in a safe place. I never thought that such a strange thing could happen. It must have been someone close to me who stole them. My husband is extremely reluctant to report this, and so my distrust of him only grows. My name is Elisa. I'm 25 years old and an office worker. My husband Joe is 28 years old and was an upperclassman in college. After graduating from college, I had a drinking party with my college friends. Joe happened to be there too. That was how we met. We didn't have a chance to see each other while we were in college, so the drinking party was like our first meeting. My husband, who was drunk at the time, made a strong appeal to me, and we decided to go out on the spur of the moment. Even when he wasn't drunk, he told me that he liked me, so I was reassured that he really meant it. My husband is really persistent. He was the one who kept persuading me to marry him from the time we were dating. He would also praise me and say,
"Your soup is delicious. I want to marry you. Thank you for washing my clothes. I want to marry you."
It's these small things, but he really showed how much he wanted to marry me. He loves me so much, so it feels nice. In fact, I am so happy that he talked a lot about our future together. About a year into our relationship, I found out that I was pregnant. To be honest, I was thinking that it would be exciting to have a child with him. Looking back, I sometimes feel that I should have been more careful. When I told my husband that I was pregnant, he was very happy. He always takes action, so we registered our marriage on the same day. We were now living together for the first time. We both used to live on our own. I was somewhat confident in my housework and had my own way of doing things, so I was anxious about living with someone else. My husband had also been living alone for a long time, and he said that he was confident in his housework. I thought that this would be okay, and I had high hopes for him, but I only got disappointed. In the beginning, he washed the dishes and cleaned the house, but the habit was gone after only a month. There were cups left on the table. Clothes were left scattered in the living room. He never took out the trash. I was in the early stages of pregnancy, so I tried to get my husband to help me with the housework as much as possible. I said, "I'm not feeling well today because of the morning sickness. Would you clean up after dinner for me?" My husband didn't even look at me. because he was so absorbed in his phone.
I'm in the middle of a good game right now. I will do it later.
I wonder if he was really listening. I went to bed early. When I woke up the next morning, the dishes were still in the sink. My husband was up late at night playing games on his phone. He's sleeping in the living room. I was in tears because I was suffering and he was not responding to my request for help. But I knew that giving up at this point was not an option. I asked him to help me with the housework again that night. Did you forget to wash the dishes yesterday? I'd like you to do it today if you can.
Okay, I know. My mom would never say something like that.
For a moment, what my husband said made me feel uncomfortable. I thought about asking for more details, but my husband might get cranky if I say too much. I swallowed down the discomfort I was sure I felt and simply said, "Thank you." The next morning, I felt so much disappointment again. Yes, my husband did wash the dishes, but the dishes were left without being wiped dry. The sink wasn't wiped either, and the area was also soaked with water. Did I have to say, wash the dishes, wipe them, and put them back on the shelf? I felt so discouraged and sighed deeply. I had no choice but to put the dishes away. I wonder what my husband's life was like when he lived alone. When I was beginning to distrust him, he started to talk about his mother often.
My mama never made me or my dad do any housework.
I see. Was your mom working?
No, she's a stay-at-home mom. Well, she's a housewife, so she's supposed to do the housework. My mama did her chores perfectly, you know.
I see.
I hope you can be just like my mama, Lisa. You should work hard.
So for the first time, I learned that my husband called my mother-in-law Mama. I also learned that she is his ideal mother and that he wants me to be like her. I was astonished. Unfortunately, my husband really had a mother complex. Well, how about I quit my job since I'm pregnant and become a full-time housewife? Then I can do more housework.
That's not good. In this day and age, both husband and wife should be working, right? You can't just keep relying solely on my income.
My husband did not listen to my suggestion at all. What? But you want me to be like your mom, don't you?
You can at least balance work and housework, because that's just the way it is now.
So since you're saying it's this day and age, you will share the housework too, right?
What the heck? Even my mama wouldn't make me do that.
What he was saying was so messed up. My head was full of questions. In other words, he wanted me to take care of everything at home and be in charge of the finances too. It was too convenient for my husband, and I cannot accept it. I tried to talk to him again and again, but he would not change his mind. On the contrary, he said something unexpected.
If you don't want to do the housework that badly, I will call Mama. That's definitely better.
Why would you do that? That's not what I mean. I just want you to do things right.
I'm telling you, it's not right to make me do it. So if Mama is here, it's gonna be solved.
I don't know if it was because he wanted his beloved mother to be close to him, but my husband and I did not get along well. When my belly started to swell and become more noticeable, I was dreading the situation. Finally, my mother-in-law started coming in and out of our house.
Oh my, isn't this so dirty? I will do all the housework for you.
Every time she came to our house, she was very enthusiastic. It was as if she would redo the chores I had done one after the other. She was always trying to do things that I felt like my pace was disturbed. This is our house, so you don't have to do so much. It's all right.
It's better if I do it myself. I'd rather do it myself.
I told her what I wanted her to do. but she wouldn't listen to me. It's unfortunate that my mother-in-law and I couldn't communicate well. My mother-in-law seems to be proud of what she has done so far. She would often tell me stories like this.
My husband is a bit disagreeable, but he makes a lot of money. He's currently working abroad.
Is that so?
But the reason he can focus on his job and make so much money is also because of me. I'm sure Joe will be just like his father. So you should learn from me, Alyssa.
Haha, yes. This seems to be the reason why my husband was telling me to be like my mother-in-law. I'm sure that my mother-in-law had been telling him this idea for a long time.
Oh, by the way, have you decided on a name for your child yet?
No, we haven't decided yet.
About that, I'd like you to decide on the child's name, Mama.
What?
Mama is going to help us a lot when the baby is born, so I don't mind if she decides. Oh my God, I'm so glad.
Even when I make a blatantly disgusted face, they don't even look at me. I'm the one who is going to give birth to my baby, but I'm getting angry at their selfishness. I guess it was because of these days that I began to have frequent stomach cramps. I was stressed out and felt that my body was starting to show signs that I was not doing well. Every time my stomach rumbled, I would worry that my child would suffer. I became sicker and sicker at work, and so I began to take longer and longer breaks. I felt bad about this, and so I decided to talk to my boss about it. I said, "Excuse me, I need to talk to you about something." My boss immediately told me that he could tell just by looking that I was not feeling well. He suggested that I take maternity leave as soon as possible. I felt bad and said, but my boss said he would be happier if I had a healthy child and returned to work in good health. With his encouragement, I decided to take his advice and go on maternity leave. Thankfully, the people around me did not criticize me for it, but rather they supported me. When I get home, I will tell my husband that I'm on maternity leave. My mother-in-law was there today as well, as she should be. When I told them about my maternity leave, my husband didn't look happy about it.
What are you going to do throughout that time? How are you going to make a living?
I can't work because of my health condition. It's for the sake of our child. Let's just manage to get by on our own.
If you're not feeling well, then why don't you ask my mama to take care of the housework? Then you can go to work. Yes, that's right.
My mother-in-law's expression of approval is very annoying. My mother-in-law is the cause of my health problems, but my husband doesn't understand anything. I didn't like his response and have lost interest in arguing with him any further. I'm sorry, but if you can't understand me no matter what I say, then I can't stay here. I'm on maternity leave and I'm going home to have a baby, so I'm going back to my parents' house right away.
Back to your parents' house? What do you mean?
I had hoped to give birth at my hometown without my husband's knowledge. I was afraid that if I talked to my husband about it, he would say that he wants my mother-in-law to be there, so I could not tell him. When they found out that I was going back to my hometown, they were both furious.
You traitor! How dare you do this? You hurt my mama. Why don't you just have the baby here?
The two of them were so furious that I was surprised and overwhelmed. But I knew that if I didn't get out of there, I might be pushed around by my mother-in-law and my husband who has a mother complex. I've already paid the hospital where I'm going to give birth. You don't want to waste money, do you? Actually, I hadn't paid for it yet. But to my stingy husband, this lie seems to be effective. With the two of them trembling with anger, I quickly packed up my belongings and went back to my parents' house that day. Life at home is like heaven. I was able to spend time at my own pace. I was relaxed. My stomach tightness gradually got lighter, and my health condition gradually stabilized. As for my mother-in-law and husband, I think they are still very much upset that I'm going to give birth here. While I was here, they did not contact me at all. Actually, it made me feel safe and secure. I am able to spend my time without thinking about anything bad. And I was able to give birth to a healthy baby boy on the exact day of his due date. My husband probably forgot about the due date because he never contacted me at all. It seems he didn't know that I had given birth, so I decided to let him know that the baby was born safely. Then, after such a long period of no contact, I received a phone call from my husband.
You don't have to stay at your parents' house anymore, right? Come home soon.
The truth is, I wanted to stay at home for a little while longer and focus on raising my child. However, I had been at my parents' house for a long time, so I decided to return to my husband's place. When I returned to my husband's house, my mother-in-law was waiting for me. I wondered how they would react. As soon as he saw his son's face, he complained.
Why did he have to look like Alyssa? He should have looked more like me.
He looks like you here, and he looks like me over here. He doesn't look like Alyssa, so it's fine. Even though I endured the pain and the struggle of giving birth, they treated me so badly. I didn't have time to react to the words of my mother-in-law and husband. What was even more shocking was that the layout of the house had been completely changed. I could tell immediately that my mother-in-law had done it. You did a lot of redecorating, huh? I'm the one who did it.
I had my mama come over every day since I started working remotely. I also had our room redecorated to my mama's liking.
They are talking so happily in close proximity, and it felt physically impossible for me to be here, so I looked away. I found it unbearable to have my mother-in-law by my side. I urged my mother-in-law to leave because I felt tired that day. She came to our house with a large package with the intention of staying the night, so she didn't like it. If you disrespect me, you're gonna get it. She left the house with a loud bang. For the next few days, my mother-in-law did not come. I felt very much at ease even when I had to take care of my child. When my mother-in-law comes over, it would be chaotic again. So I decided to put together the documents to be submitted to the office in the meantime. Oh, I put them away here, but they're not here. I can't find my bankbook and ID, which I need to submit the documents. I had kept them in my room, so there was no way they could be missing. I asked my husband just to be sure, but he said he didn't know. I placed those in a pouch and put it in a drawer in my room, so it was natural that he didn't know about it. I searched for it in the corner of the house, thinking that I might have left it somewhere when I was tired. However, the room had been redecorated without my permission, so I could not find it easily. Because it is an important thing, I suddenly felt uneasy. It's most likely a thief. Maybe they got in while we were gone. I have to call 911. I picked up my phone to consult with the police before anything serious happens. My husband, looking impatient, stops me.
Stop it! I was home most of the time anyway. And as for guests, it's only Mama who came to the house. It's not worth calling the police.
Because even after all this searching, I can't find it, you know. If it had been stolen, we'd be in big trouble.
Look again. If you don't look hard enough, you will cause Mama trouble.
My husband snatched the phone out of my hand, desperately trying to stop me from calling the police. Why is he in such a hurry? He doesn't give me my phone back for a while after that. He has also been making a lot of comments defending his mother. I felt suspicious about his behavior and decided to take drastic action. The next day, My mother-in-law came to our house for the first time in a while. Her movements were awkward, and her vibe was different. She was looking from left to right and did not look at me at all. I sensed that she was hiding something from me, so I decided to ask her about it. Emma, I want to ask you something. When you redecorated our room, did you see my bank book and ID?
Well, I don't know. I wonder what happened.
I'm having a really hard time finding them, so I'm thinking of talking to the police.
The police? Oh, that's right. I remember now.
You remember?
The pouch with a flower design. It was in your room. Did you lose it by any chance? You can't even keep track of your belongings. You're so pathetic.
She was upset and raising her voice. My mother-in-law looked so suspicious, but still, I couldn't understand how she could still make fun of me. I thought that my mother-in-law needed no mercy. I folded my arms. How did you know those items were in the flower pattern pouch?
What?
My mother-in-law stiffened, and her face looked guilty. My husband also turned pale and held his head in his hands. Seeing the two of them together, I felt angry and ashamed of them, plus a bunch of other feelings that were hard to describe. I see it now. Then I should leave it to the police.
Stop! Don't do that!
At that moment, the sound of sirens rang out from outside. A police car is already outside. If you have an excuse, please tell it to the police. My husband and mother-in-law continued to make excuses. I told them that I didn't need to listen to what they had to say. I decided to leave the rest to the police. Thanks to the police, my bank book and ID were returned to me. I knew that my mother-in-law had stolen them. My mother-in-law, who did not like my behavior, did it to harass me. She actually tried to withdraw money from my account, but she was told by the bank teller that only the owner of the account could do it. The bank refused to accept the withdrawal. Even so, she kept my bank book and ID hidden to harass me. My husband knew what my mother-in-law had done, but he could not betray his beloved mother and hurt her back. When I learned of this fact, I confronted him with divorce. I thought that I would never want to see these guilty people again, so I also demanded child support in one lump sum. Of course, neither my husband nor my mother-in-law had the financial means to do so. I told them to contact my father-in-law right then and there. My father-in-law seems to be a decent man. When he found out what my mother-in-law and husband had done, he took my side. He told me that he would take care of the child support and that my mother-in-law and husband were responsible for paying him back. Thus, the time Joe and I were married only lasted a short time. But I'm glad that I got rid of that man. Now that I'm a single mother, I'm more than happy to see my son grow up. My life is busy and difficult, but my son has made every day of my life very fulfilling. I'm now getting close to going back to work, and I'm trying to push myself to live strongly. As for my ex-husband, after the divorce, I sometimes hear rumors about him, and it seems that his mother complex got worse. An acquaintance of mine has seen my ex-husband and my mother-in-law walking hand in hand, and was worried about what was going on. I have no feelings for my ex-husband at all, so that I can laugh at such stories. I know that they will never change, but I wanted them to repay their debt to my father-in-law.